Welcome to Chris Henry's myth busting series, and now we're going to look at elements number 2 and 3 because these two areas work so closely together, and that's the grip and the bridge. The grip, we're going to look at 3 different areas that people talk about a lot. The form of the grip, how the grip should wrap around the cue, the tension of the grip, how tight should the grip be, or how loose should the grip be, and also the position of the grip when it strikes the cue ball. At what angle should your arm be? Then we're going to look at the bridge, the form of the bridge, and also the distance of the bridge from the cue ball, because all these things are quite important. And many people talk about having a short bridge or a long bridge, and it depends on the individual. So what is very important with the grip and the bridge and how they work together, and this is really important to understand, the distance between the front of the grip and the V of the bridge makes a very big difference for many players, because most players do not cue straight, and that includes Stephen Hendry, Ronnie O'Sullivan, and many other top players. John Higgins, you know, Stephen Hendry is a left to right cueist, Ronnie O'Sullivan is slightly left to right cueist, John Higgins is slightly left to right cueist. You know, you've got Judd Trump, who's a right to left cueist. So most of the players don't actually cue straight, and because they have this arc or S in their technique, that is when the distance between bridge and grip makes the biggest difference, and you've got to find the ideal distance for you individually as a player. So let's look at the grip then very quickly. The form. How do we actually grip the cue? Well, traditionally, most grips are generally, mainly, index finger and thumb wrapping around the cue, with the web of the grip actually touching the cue. And the other fingers then on the cue as well. And that's a standard kind of grip. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this. Look at players in the past like Alex Higgins. He had his index finger off the cue. And he was a player that I grew up as a young boy practicing with. And I used to watch this grip of Alex. And his finger would be off like this. So now he was gripping mostly with the middle and fourth finger, which is very interesting. You've got Ronnie O'Sullivan. You know, you can see his index finger is down and is more gripping with the middle finger. Then you've got other players like Stephen Hendry, Mark Selby, Shaun Murphy, who have more of a traditional grip, where they're gripping more at the front, and that then allows them, as they take the cue back, the hand is opening slightly to keep the cue horizontal and to deliver the cue on a horizontal plane. So in terms of the form, again, it depends on the individual. You've got to find the right form for you, because ultimately it's about this hand being able to deliver this cue to gain that first most important element, striking the cue ball where intended. And there's many different ways to do that. In terms of how much tension, basically, as this cue hits the ball becomes quite heavy, and there's a certain amount of pushback of the cue. So the grip has to have enough tension at that point so that the cue doesn't slide through the hand. And that tension has to be just to that level, not too tight, but tight enough so the cue isn't pushed back. To find that kind of tension is a very simple exercise. Take your cue at the end with your grip, put your hand straight out, and now you've got just enough tension so that the cue doesn't slip through the hand. Which it's about that kind of tension that you need. Of course, as you start to deliver the cue with speed, the grip tends to start to grip a little bit tighter, just to make sure it doesn't slip through on impact with the cue ball. So that's the tension. And then at what point during the swing? Well, a lot of people talk about players having to strike the cue ball at what's called the vertical, 90-degree vertical straight down facing to the ground. Well, not all players do that. Some players strike the cue ball slightly inside the vertical, top professional players. Some players strike the cue ball slightly behind vertical, and some players strike it vertical. Again, it's a personal thing to you. It's individual. You've got to find the right way for you. So, you know, there's no textbook correct way to do these things. You've got to be able to do these things and find what works for you personally. Then we're going to move on to the bridge. Maybe we can just pull the camera down here now. So what we've got here is, and this is where we always work from with the bridge, we've got the cue ball on the brown spot. And we also have this D line. Now, we like to use this D line as a guide. And some people talk about having a certain distance from the cue ball. Well, let's use this D line as a guide because it's important. It's advised by many coaches and books and manuals that your bridge should be close or long. Okay, let's have a look at some of the top professional players. You know, Ronnie O'Sullivan, for example, when the cue ball is on the brown spot, this D line is around about through the knuckles of his hand, and that would be his kind of distance from the cue ball. Then you'd have some players like Judd Trump and Neil Robertson and Shaun Murphy that would actually have their knuckles inside the D line, and that kind of distance there, that's how they would play the game, and that's how they would feel more comfortable and get the best results. Then you'd have players like Mark Selby and Stephen Hendry. They would have the middle joints of the fingers on that D line when the cue ball's on the brown spot. So different distances for different players because of different mechanics. The form of the bridge, basically, there's many different kinds of forms. I mean, you've got some players that have their fingers bent, but mostly, generally, it's a flat hand on the table, fingers wide apart. You bring the fingers back towards the hand without bending the fingers to make that shape right there, and then the thumb goes up here. But again, you know, should you be straight on? Should you be sideways? Should the bridge arm be straight? Should it be bent? I prefer personally to have this forearm on the table because it creates more stability. But again, there's no right or wrong way. You've got to find what works best. So let's just have a quick look at this then in terms of playing a shot, because what you've got to do is get some feedback as to what works best. What kind of grip, what kind of bridge, what bridge distance, what grip position in terms of your bridge as well. And let's maybe we can bring the camera around here. And we're going to use this product here. We've been talking about this now for over a year, and it's called the balls. It's an invention that we've brought to the market. Many top professional players are using these on a daily basis because it's instant diagnosis technology. It tells you very quickly what's going on. And in this particular instance here, you're going to see that we're going to strike this cue ball with the intention of hitting it in the middle without side spin. And then we can test these things, grip and bridge. So let's just have a quick look at this now. We're going to place this cue ball onto the brown spot. And I'm now going to have my grip position and my bridge position in a certain place. So I'll have quite a long bridge, a bit like Stephen Hendry and Mark Selby. And I'm going to hold my cue at the back. And I'm trying to hit the ball in the middle of the ball without any side spin. And if I do that, the ball will enter to the pocket. Let's see what happens. Right, well, you can see for me that I was caused to put left-hand side spin on that ball. If this ball goes to the right, 17 gram, it means I've applied unintentional left-hand side spin. So that mechanic does not work for me. My bridge and my grip were not working optimally to allow me to get that first key, striking the ball where I want to. And in this particular instance, it's without side spin. Let's try that again. And what I'm going to do now, maybe you can see this with the camera, I'm going to take my bridge distance from middle of the joints on the D line. Now I'm going to move, just get that camera sorted there. Now I'm going to move my knuckles, instead of having them on the middle of the knuckles here, I'm going to take my knuckles now up to the D line, so my bridge is a little bit closer than the last attempt. So let's try that. I'm going to keep my grip in the same place. I'm going to put my knuckles on the D line, and this time I'm going to try and strike the cue ball. And now it's actually gone straight in the pocket. So I now start to get some really good information, because my grip position and my bridge position at that point, and when you think about it now, listen to this one, the distance between here and the V on the bridge has now slightly increased. It's gone a little bit longer, which is helping me to cue a little bit straighter. Understand that. And when you can start to play around with these things and the mechanics and the visuals, it's very interesting. Even though you might not be textbook bridge or grip, you can find ways that work best for you. And so I really hope that bit of information is going to help you. There are a lot of myths out there. That's 2 and 3 covered. We've covered number 1, which was the eyes. And we're going to bring number 4 out in another few more days. So we look forward to seeing you then.